Good morning, everyone. It's Wednesday, August 18th, coming to you live from Seoul. I'm Kim Mo-gyan. Before we begin, these are the stories we're following at the top of the hour. South Korea reports over 1,800 new infections of COVID-19 Wednesday, jumping back up as the effects of the three-day-long Liberation Day holiday begin to show. Authorities will decide whether to extend or even strengthen the current level of social distancing later this week. Following the Taliban's takeover of Afghanistan, the group held an unprecedented press conference, during which they promised to forge peaceful relations with other countries and asserted that women's rights will be protected within the framework of Islam. And South Korea's large businesses seem to be slowly recovering. Latest data shows in the first half of this year, operating profit from around 250 large enterprises in the country totaled more than $85 billion, more than twice the amount compared to last year. We begin with the COVID-19 situation in South Korea and the rest of the world. South Korea's daily new infections rose again Wednesday, following a long Liberation Day weekend. It once again returned back above the 1,800 mark after less than a week. For more on this, we have our Kim Do-yeon at the News Center. Do-yeon, give us the latest.
Morgan, South Korea's new COVID-19 cases have risen compared to the day before with 1,805, of which all but 38 were locally transmitted. This is up 432 cases from the day before, and it was expected following the three-day weekend period. Despite the rise, that's not super high for a mid-week tally, but officials say this is due to the slowdown in testing over the long weekend. The peak usually comes around 2 days after the weekend ends. That said, officials say they expect a number of new cases to rise as we go further into the week. Also, one thing to keep in mind is that the island of Jeju will begin social distancing level 4 starting today. That means just like the capital area, a gathering ban of 3 or more after 6 p.m. will be in place. In addition, all 12 major beaches on the island will be shut. This is set to continue until the 29th of this month.
Do-yeon, let's talk about the more transmissible Delta variant. How is the country coping with that?
Mo-gyan, the Delta variant is now the most common variant type in the country, and it's actually picking up even more speed as well. Last week, the Delta variant made up more than 85% of more than 3,200 random positive samples authorities conducted tests on. That's more than a 12% rise compared to the week before and an 80% rise compared to the month before. Adding to the concern was the confirmation of a Delta variant plus case, the third in the country. However, the confirmed patient had been in strict isolation before being confirmed, so authorities believe there have been no further transmissions associated with this case. Now, on the vaccination front, South Korea has now confirmed more than 2,100 breakthrough cases in the country. The number reflects data as of August 12th, and considering the status of the vaccination drive then, that's about 0.03% of the fully vaccinated. Of these confirmed patients, the most widely used vaccine was Janssen, then AstraZeneca, then Pfizer. And when authorities studied a random set of cases to check for the Delta variant, of the 555 cases, 363 of them were the more transmissible strain. Authorities say that the rise in breakthrough infections is normal as more people are vaccinated, so they're not particularly concerned about the numbers yet.
Just some 48 hours after recapturing the Afghan capital of Kabul, the Taliban on Tuesday held an unprecedented press conference. They doubled down on efforts to convince the world they are no longer the same group that imposed brutal rule on Afghanistan in the late 90s. Kim Hyo-sun reports.
Following the Taliban's takeover of Afghanistan, the group held an unprecedented press conference during which they promised a number of things. A spokesperson from the militant group explained that they wished to forge peaceful relations with other countries.
I want to give assurance to the international community, including the United States of America, that Afghanistan will never be used against anyone. Also, I want to give assurance to the countries in the region and our neighbors that we will not allow Afghan soil to be used against our neighbors or other countries. Therefore, we want all the international community to be sure that we will abide by our commitments.
He also asserted that women's rights will be protected, but within the framework of Islam. The Taliban previously declared an amnesty across Afghanistan and also urged women to join its government. It also made clear that the war in Afghanistan was over, adding that it will wait until the departure of all foreign forces from the country before creating a new government.
Freedom is the right of all nations. The Afghan people, by using their legal right after 20 years of jihad, were able to take their freedom and clean their country from the occupation and occupiers.
The group also said that they wanted private media to remain independent, but highlighted that members of the press should not work against national values. While the Taliban seeks to portray themselves as more moderate than they were in the late 1990s, when they imposed a brutal rule on the country, many Afghans remain skeptical and rushed to flee the country. Washington is also wrapping up evacuation from the country, with the Pentagon explaining that it plans to have one plane traveling out every hour by Wednesday. Countries around the world are also responding to the Taliban's takeover, which is progressing faster than expected. China is rating itself for friendly relations with the militant group, with its foreign ministry spokesperson welcoming the chance for Beijing to deepen ties with Afghanistan, a country that shares a 76-kilometer-long border with China. Major Western powers, however, remain firm that they will not accept the Taliban as the country's rulers. British Prime Minister Boris Johnson stressed that nobody should bilaterally recognize the Taliban's new government. He also plans to convene a G7 meeting to discuss details with member nations. Kim Hyo-sun, Arirang News.
During their first official news briefing, the Taliban have pledged to make many changes from their previous rules some 20 years ago, including protecting the rights of women. But many remain skeptical, as hardly any women have been seen on the streets of Kabul since the takeover. Shin Yeon has a story.
Things are moving quickly in Afghanistan. Just 2 days after taking over the heart of the country, Kabul, the Taliban held an official news briefing on Tuesday where they said women would have their rights protected within the framework of Islam.
Women will be afforded all their rights, whether it is in work or other activities, because women are a key part of society. And we are guaranteeing all their rights within the limits of Islam.
Also on this day, a Taliban spokesman appeared on the same screen with a female anchor. Beheshta Argand, a presenter from Tolo News Channel, interviewed a Taliban representative in the studio. The Taliban have even asked women to join their government, declaring an amnesty across Afghanistan. But their latest public stance on women is very different from when the Taliban previously ruled from 1996 to 2001. At the time, they restricted women from working and girls from going to school. Women also had to be accompanied by a male relative at all times if they wanted to leave their homes. The Taliban also administered punishments, including public stoning, in line with their strict interpretation of Sharia law, Islam's legal system. But whether the Taliban will truly protect the rights and lives of women is still the question. Photos of women that used to be on the walls of beauty salons and different stores have already been painted over. Hardly any women have been seen out on the streets of Kabul. And even if they were seen, they were all wearing burqas, what many deem to be the best armor to protect themselves. Although the Taliban hasn't yet mandated that women should wear full-body burqas like they did in the past, more women have been buying them in fear, which has seen the price of burqas increase 15-fold. Amid growing fear in the country, some women activists said they would not give up on what they have achieved so far.
Girls staying at home, if it becomes a norm, changing that would not be an easy task, and I don't want it to become a norm. Girls in schools are important, and I'm not willing to give up on that.
After the U.S. invaded Afghanistan in 2001, many restrictions on women were eased. International organizations had come together to provide girls with access to education and the liberty to live in peace. Whether this peace will remain is the main concern. Shin Yeon, Arirang News.
A virtual summit of G7 leaders will be held later next week to discuss the situation in Afghanistan. The White House said that following calls between U.S. President Joe Biden and UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson Tuesday, the two leaders decided to hold a summit to discuss a common strategy and approach. The leaders reportedly emphasized the need for close coordination among allies and further humanitarian aid and support for vulnerable Afghan nationals. The UK is one of the United States' Western allies currently helping evacuate foreign citizens and Afghan civilians from the country after Biden withdrew U.S. troops. U.S. National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan says Washington has no plans to downsize or withdraw its troops from South Korea or Europe. Taking questions from reporters Tuesday, Sullivan insisted the U.S.'s commitment to its allies and partners is sacrosanct, and it's always been. He added the nature of U.S. troops stationed in such countries are different from Afghanistan, where many Americans have been killed over the last 2 decades. Russian fighter jets capable of carrying nuclear weapons have reportedly flown near South Korea's East Sea as part of regular training on Tuesday. Russia-based Interfax news agency cited its defense ministry, saying that 2 Tu-95 bombers and several Sukhoi 35 fighter jets flew close to the East Sea for about 9 hours. It reportedly said the Russian Defense Ministry emphasized freedom of navigation in the high seas around the world, including the Pacific Ocean, in congruence with international law. The training flight route was not disclosed. However, an official from South Korea's Joint Chiefs of Staff said the fighter jets have not entered Korea's air defense identification zone, so the country's fighter jets have not been scrambled in response. Despite the economic fallout from the pandemic, large enterprises in South Korea seem to be recovering. A business rating company did research on around 250 businesses from the top 500 largest companies in Korea and found that their operating profit has more than doubled from last year. Bae-eun-ji reports.
South Korea's large businesses seem to be slowly recovering from the economic crisis caused by the COVID-19 pandemic. According to preliminary data from the business rating company CEO Score on Wednesday, in the first half of this year, operating profits of around 250 large enterprises in the country amounted to more than 100 trillion Korean won, or almost $85 billion US. This is more than twice the amount compared to the same period last year. And compared to before the pandemic in the first half of 2019, it is an increase of around 65%. Tech firms especially saw the largest amount of sales growth, increasing more than 20% and totaling over $190 billion. This is mainly because of a stronger demand in home appliances and IT products, as more people stayed home amid the pandemic. Large sales growth was also recorded for businesses related to cars and auto parts, which went up by more than 26%. This was followed by petroleum products with 23% of sales growth, and steel with more than 24%. But sales by finance companies, including banks and insurance firms, were down by around 20% in the first half of this year. Bae-eun-ji, Arirang News.
The global semiconductor market is projected to show growth both this year and next. According to industry sources Wednesday, the World Semiconductor Trade Statistics has raised its forecast for the global chip market this year from 19.7% to around 25%. It projected the chip market will amount to $551 billion US by the end of 2021, mainly led by growth in memory chips. The organization also forecasted that the chip market will grow even more next year by about 10%. A video of a late Korean freedom fighter has been released for the first time. Almost 80 years since he died, late General Hong Bum-do was also awarded the Order of Merit for National Foundation, Republic of Korea. Hong Yu reports.
78 years after the Korean freedom fighter Hong Bum-do died in Kazakhstan, a video of when he was alive was released to the public on Tuesday. The Independence Hall of Korea released a clip along with 15 other files, including pictures of the late general. The 5-minute 40-second video had been donated by Ban Byung-yul, a professor of Korean history at Hankuk University of Foreign Studies. Hong Bum-do is famous for leading major battles against Imperial Japan, including the Battle of Pongodong in Manchuria in 1920. The video shows a 55-year-old Hong in Moscow in 1921 taking part in a convention of the International Communist Party. It also shows other independence fighters, including General Choi Jin-dong, who fought alongside Hong at the Battle of Pongodong. Hong was posthumously awarded on Tuesday the Order of Merit for National Foundation for devoting his life for the fight for independence and contributing to public unity and nationalism. President Moon Jae-in said the award showed a commitment to protect Hong's spirit.
장군께 드리는 건국훈장 대한민국장은 대한민국의 영광인 동시에 장군의 정신을 기리겠다는 굳은 다짐입니다.
President Moon added that the late general will be a symbol of cooperation between South Korea and Kazakhstan toward peace and prosperity. Kazakhstan President Kassym-Jomart Tokayev said that Hong will be long remembered by Kazakhstan and that his government will continue to support the General Hongbom-do Memorial Hall. The remains of Hong's body were repatriated from Kazakhstan on Sunday in connection with President Tokayev's visit to Seoul. Hong had fled to the Soviet Union before being deported to Kazakhstan in 1937 under Stalin's forced migration policy. He died there at the age of 75. General Hongbom-do will be buried at the National Cemetery in Daejeon on Wednesday. Hong Yu, Arirang News.
Good morning. It was pouring down in the capital region during the morning commute. Well, rain is tapering off, but will pick up again in the afternoon. Meanwhile, Donghae on the East Coast is receiving downpours with heavy rain alerts issued there. In fact, eastern Gangwon-do province could see up to 100 millimeters of heavy showers, and the East Coast up to 70 millimeters. So please brace for another rough day. Then elsewhere, we'll see periodic rainfall again, and Jeollado and Gyeongsang-Pukto provinces could see up to 80 millimeters of heavy showers, along with thunder and lightning. The amount of rain will vary from region to region. It was a breezy start to the day, but afternoon readings will be similar to yesterday, reaching up to 31 degrees Celsius here in the capital. Gwangju and Busan will go up to 29 degrees Celsius this afternoon. Rain and more rain is in the forecast. The nationwide rain from Saturday will continue through next week. That's Korea for you, and here's a look at the weather conditions around the world.
And that will do it for us at this hour on Arirang News. We will be back in the next few minutes to bring you a live coverage of the burial ceremony of independence fighter Hongbom-do, so stay tuned. Thank you for watching, and goodbye.